If you've been scrolling through endless NAS options, staring at rows of drive bays, network ports, and a wall of specs, and you still can't decide which box actually makes sense for your workflow, this review is going to clear that up. I've spent the last few weeks setting up a couple of home office media servers and talking to a few small business owners who needed a reliable data hub, and the differences between just another storage box and a machine that can actually accelerate your daily tasks became pretty obvious. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the problem most people run into when they buy a NAS. You get a lot of raw storage, but you end up fighting with slow transfers, limited app support, or a system that can't keep up when you start feeding it more than a handful of users. The MINISFORUM N5 Max tries to solve those pain points by bringing a desktop-class processor and a bunch of high-speed interfaces into the same chassis. It's marketed as an AI-driven NAS, which sounds like a buzzword until you see it actually handling things like automatic photo tagging, real-time video transcoding, or running lightweight Docker containers without choking. Who should consider this machine? If you're a creator who constantly deals with multi-terabyte video libraries, a photographer who wants AI-assisted organization, or a small office that needs a central repository for both file sharing and on-the-fly processing, the N5 Max gives you the headroom to do more than just store files. Its 5 SATA bays add up to a theoretical 200 terabytes capacity, which means you could fill it with 4 terabytes or 8 terabytes drives and still have room to grow. The two 10 GB ports are a game changer for anyone who has a 10 GB switch or a workstation that can speak that speed. You'll see transfer rates that make the old gigabit bottleneck feel irrelevant. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a simple backup box for a couple of laptops, or you don't already have a fast network backbone, you'll likely pay for performance you never tap. The N5 Max ships without any hard drives, so you'll need to budget for the disks themselves. That upfront cost can push the total price well into the high 3-figure range, which is a lot for just a backup solution. Also, because it's a full-size desktop form factor, it draws more power than a typical low-power NAS, and the fans can be audible when the drives spin up under load. If you need a silent, plug-and-play unit for a bedroom or a small apartment, you might want to look elsewhere. Let's dig into the practical strengths that show up once you actually plug it in. The first thing I noticed was how fast the system boots into MinisCloud OS. That's the custom OS MINISFORUM built on top of Linux, and it bundles a bunch of apps you'd normally have to install yourself: file sharing, media streaming, surveillance, even a simple web server. The UI is clean, and the fact that it supports both Windows and macOS clients out of the box means you don't have to wrestle with SMB version mismatches or messy permission quirks. Because the OS sits on a 128 GB SSD cache, even the first time you pull a large file across the network, you get a noticeably snappy response. The AI NPU, Neural Processing Unit, is where the AI claim gets substance. In my test, I enabled the Photo Library app that automatically tags faces and objects. After letting it scan a folder of about 5,000 images, the indexing completed in a fraction of the time you'd see on a regular NAS with a standard CPU. For a photographer who wants to find a client's portrait without manually naming files, that feature translates into real productivity gains. Similarly, when I set up Plex to transcode a 4K movie for a 1080p client, the CPU handled the conversion without stuttering, something you'll often see fail on cheaper units that lack dedicated hardware acceleration. Another strength is the connectivity suite. Besides the dual 10 GB, there are 2 USB 4 ports, a handful of USB-C, and 5 M.2 slots for NVMe SSDs. I used one of those slots to install a 2 TB NVMe drive as a fast scratch disk for the AI workloads, and the system never missed a beat. The slide-out motherboard design is a clever touch. You can pop the board out, swap out the 64 GB of LPDDR5x RAM, or upgrade the SSD without taking the whole chassis apart. That kind of modularity is rare in the NAS world and means the box can evolve with your needs. Now let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The biggest one is thermal management. Because the unit packs a high-end processor, a full complement of drives, and active cooling, it runs warmer than a typical 2-bay home NAS. In a small office with limited airflow, you may notice the fan ramp up during sustained transfers. That's not a failure, but it does add a layer of noise you need to factor in if you plan to keep the box in a quiet environment. Another subtle issue is